Will the RTX 4080 sell out immediately is probably a question you guys looking for a high-end GPU later this year will be asking yourself. And it's a question that also applies to AMD's RDNA 3 releases, next-gen Intel CPUs, and just about everything and anything in between. The last couple of years have been so rough for PC gamers. I understand, I get it, and it's been hard for us trying to recommend to you guys the best parts to buy when simply every single thing was out of stock. But what a lot of people are probably intrigued about right now is, will history repeat itself? Will time go back to how it was a couple of years ago? And if so, why is that the case? If not, why is it not the case? And what can you do to try and avoid losing out on the next gen GPU lottery? Let's talk about it. Now, with RTX 30 series, the cards hit the shelves pretty immediately in September and left within basically 5 minutes. Retailers and GPU manufacturers rejoiced for a brief moment as they raked in the cash from unprecedented demands for next-gen graphics cards. But their happiness was short-lived, as they too failed to get any more stock to sell to consumers. Nvidia and AMD battled with a PR nightmare, though they did make quite a lot of money, as gamers around the world were literally fuming that they could not buy a brand new graphics card. Scalpers hoovered up GPUs off the back of major demand, selling them on eBay for like 3, 4, 5 times the price. It was a wild period in the market, and those mining cryptocurrencies somehow, I don't know how they did this, well, probably do, it was bots and all of these other mystical creatures, hoovered up hundreds and hundreds of graphics cards, contributing to global warming, power outages, fires, and of course uncertainty and carnage in the cryptocurrency market. As if that wasn't enough, I mean, things just didn't get any better from there. Huge supply chain issues off the back of COVID, where people were isolating, factories were closed, we'd stopped digging things out the ground because we thought no one was going to have any money, left the whole situation looking pretty bleak. And those manufacturers who tried to up production, pretty much all three of them in terms of Intel, AMD, and Nvidia, just couldn't do so quick enough. But have some lessons been learned from those last-gen GPU launches, or are we going to be back to square one? Now, when any new, hotly anticipated product hits the market, the demand is always going to be higher. And at the end of every single GPU lifecycle, people do naturally hold out and wait. It's like if you've got $30,000 for a brand new Kia, and you know that Kia are soon bringing out the fancy new model with an upgraded touchscreen and a nice loud exhaust. You're going to go ahead and wait for that next generation because you don't want to look silly driving your new car home only to see your neighbours picked up a slightly nicer one for exactly the same price, or maybe not just a little bit more. What that naturally does is create pent-up demand, and that of course inflates prices, or at least keeps them at those higher MSRP or above levels. If you look back to the original launch of 20 series with 2070, 2080, and later the Super lineup, those cards sold out pretty instantaneously, with lots of people who didn't buy in the first week left on a waiting list or waiting for new stock to land. The difference is that the manufacturers were able to better level their supply with the demand. And while Nvidia shipped way more units of 30 series in the first few months than they did 20 series, there were so many more people who had either got into PC gaming, who were looking for an upgrade, or of course were stuck at home with nothing else to spend their money on. But this time definitely looks different. The crypto market is completely through the floor, and while I wouldn't rule out a return to some level of boom within Ethereum and Bitcoin and all that jazz, hopefully GPU mining as a major factor is gone, at least for the foreseeable 12, 18 months, and to be honest with you, hopefully forever. If it does rebound, it's very unlikely to be yet. And with restrictions in terms of low hash rate designs likely to come as standard on 40 series GPUs, I'm not too concerned. Plus, the next gen cards are also rumoured to be very power hungry, something that miners despise and can actually do gamers a favour, even if it does make your energy bills that little bit more pricey at the end of the month. To make matters even better for the next gen launches, Nvidia and AMD are even rumoured to be trying to reduce some of their orders of wafers and semiconductors for these new GPUs because they think they've perhaps bought too many. Now, some people will be looking at that and going, I've got no sympathy, you've bought too many. And that's not AMD and Nvidia trying to keep prices super high. It's perhaps, if true, simply a reflection on the fact that they've got lots of stock at the moment of existing units that now they actually can't sell, something we've talked about in a recent video, and a reflection reflection of the global economic downturn, which will naturally suppress demand. It's not for them about trying to keep these huge high scalp prices, as because while that benefits these manufacturers in the short term, in the long term it's volatile and doesn't provide the kind of certainty to shareholders that a lot of businesses want. That's not to say manufacturers necessarily lost out through the GPU crisis. They didn't. They were selling pretty much all the units they were shipping. One thing that manufacturers have also done, which should help massively, is majorly bolster supply chains. A supply chain is basically the path that all the materials you need to make a graphics card take from being extracted or produced and then being used in a GPU. It's something that Dr. Lisa Su, AMD's legendary CEO, talked about in great detail, where AMD were actually given budgets to go and help suppliers in order to get more materials into the factories and up production. It's not simply about making your factory bigger and hiring more people. You need the raw materials and the power to get these things made. Another factor to be discussed is of course the global economic situation. Lots of people in the UK, the US and around the world are feeling the pinch right now, as things in life naturally get more expensive and inflation skyrockets. Now, I'm no financial expert. I'm not going to give you an assessment of the global economic situation because I'll just make myself look a bit silly. But what I can tell you for certain, based on what the news and other factors are saying, is that people naturally have got less disposable income right now, and that will suppress GPU demand. If you're one of the lucky ones with some money stashed away for a graphics card, you're likely going to be fighting less people when they first launch to get your hands on one of the all-important first samples. But what does all of this mean? Does it mean that GPUs will immediately sell out when they first launch? Probably. But does it mean they'll be gone for a long time, as they were with 30 series? Definitely not. We also don't know quite how much stock that AMD and Nvidia are currently stockpiling of their Lovelace and RDNA 3 GPUs. They're going to want to avoid a repeat of last time, as are retailers, and I'd expect supply into the sales channels around the world to be stronger this time around. It's also worth noting that when any new product comes out, whether it's a graphics card, whether it's a phone, whether it's a car, it takes a little bit of time for factories to ramp up production. The yields from the raw materials at the very beginning, from that all-important silicon, are naturally lower, and as the production rate increases and the yield also increases, the percentage of usable goods and the number of total goods increases at an exponential rate. As the yield gets better and better for GPUs, that's when manufacturers can afford to start making more budget-oriented cards. If you've got a low yield, an RTX 4050 tier card is never going to make any money. That's why the high-end cards always come first and the more budget options come later. We've talked about whether you should wait for AMD or Nvidia's new GPUs at length before, and I don't want to dive into that too much because we've got videos talking about it. But essentially, if you're looking for something like a 3080 Ti, it may be worth waiting. If you're looking for a 3050 tier GPU, I frankly wouldn't bother. Now is an awesome time to pick a card up. Many of you as well will also be playing the game where you either are trying to pick up a used 30 series GPU or some end-of-line stock, some of the last units that factories have pumped out and retailers are now looking to shift. And it's this segment of the market that will be waiting for the perfect time to pounce. All the rumours suggest that new cards are coming soon. They'll definitely be on shelves in time for Black Friday, Cyber Monday and Christmas, making your window of opportunity to buy an older card on the cheap very, very imminent. I'd actually argue the window of opportunity starts now and probably lasts for the next 6 to 8 weeks. It all depends just how many of you are waiting to pick up a next-gen GPU. If you've already got a graphics card that you're happy with, I'd stick with it, to be honest, until the new year, where you can assess all of the cards AMD bring to the table, everything Nvidia brings, and maybe even what Intel are offering up. But as we've discussed in another recent video, that's not looking all too positive right now. The only way that you really win in all of this is to wait and see what everybody does and compare and contrast options between each other. Some of you may naturally have an allegiance to Nvidia cards more than AMD, in which case I'd urge you to pull the trigger if you're happy with the releases Nvidia bring to the table, if AMD haven't yet bought their cards too. Where things get more tricky is if you haven't yet got a PC, or in fact you've got a GPU in desperate need of an upgrade, in which case I'd perhaps advise you to either pick up one of the current cards if it provides the performance you're after at the price you like, or wait out for the new releases. But don't wait until next year, until everyone's released everything, because otherwise you won't have a PC at all. 8 months ago, people said, James, should I wait for new GPUs? You could have been gaming for 8 months. You don't have to wait a year. How many games, how many hours, how much enjoyment can you have in a year? Waiting for the next big thing is never the best idea. And naturally in life, some people are always going to win and some people are always going to lose. Not to get too philosophical with all of this. The way you can avoid losing though is by buying any of the current GPUs in about 6 6 weeks' time. The closer we get to Christmas, the closer these cards are undoubtedly going to land. AMD have said late summer/early fall. Nvidia have been very quiet, but I'm sure cards will probably land from them in the next few months. And Intel too have said late summer for their next gen GPUs. With AMD CPUs also slated for fall, there's plenty of options about to hit the market. If you're happy with the current GPUs and the price they're available for, pick one of those up now. But if you're after a high-end card, make sure you've got your fast finger ready to click that buy button, as I'd expect new cards to sell out pretty quickly, but then be replenished in a much shorter time frame than what we saw with 3000 and RX 6000 series. If you found this video useful, make sure to get subscribed. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.